fellow travelers, and welcome to another episode of Vertical Stars Podcast 4th season. My loyal listeners, thank you for continued support. Enjoy this amazing interview because Scott Chitwood boards the mothership to discuss Afterburn from Red 5 Comic. Now come on board with Traversing the Stars. Hi, Mr. Chitwood. Thanks for coming to Vertical Stars Podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Feel my pleasure. So I always start with a question of inspiration. So inspire your love for comics and who your earliest influences.
Oh, well, as far as my love for comics, when I was a kid, my family picked up and moved overseas to Norway in the mid 80s. And, this is before the internet, before we didn't have cable TV or anything. So I just grabbed onto anything in English that I could find. And there was three things that I was able to find. Mad Magazine, the original Web of Spider-Man comics, and Iron Man.
Hmm.
And those I got on right in the middle of Armor Wars of Iron Man and Kraven's Last Hunt in Web of
Hmm.
Spider-Man, and I was hooked. And so then I just kind of started getting more and more, and then I found a local comic shop that had John Byrne's Fantastic Four comics and the classic X-Men comics, reprinted the Claremont run of X-Men. So I was hooked from that point on, and then I've been collecting comics ever since. To the point where I had to stop. Like they could make a tomb for me with all the long boxes of comics that I've got, and I've joked with my wife they're going to have to do a Viking funeral. They can burn me on a pyre of dollar comics that aren't worth anything. But that started it, and then it rolled into actually wanting to make comics myself. Um, if you play in an environment long enough, you eventually want to start doing it yourself, right? So
Hmm.
it was like, okay, I've seen them do this enough. I think I know what needs to be done. And then me and my friend Paul Inns from our days on the Force.net Star Wars website, we decided to team up and make the company Red 5 Comics, and then just dove into it blindly. Made it up as we went along.
Yeah.
We made a lot of mistakes along the way, but had a lot of hits as well. So and the rest is history.
So a few things. One, what a great time to accidentally bump into comic books. Craven's Last Hunt, the Claremont run of the X-Men. That's a nice time to accidentally bump into comic books.
Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah, and it was also right at the same time that indie comics were starting as well. I became a fan of the movie Aliens, and
Mm.
then found out, hey, there's this company, Dark Horse Comics, and they're making Aliens comics.
Hmm.
So I sought it out, got it, and realized, hey, there's a world beyond Marvel and DC out there, that there's cool stuff. And ironically, the guy that drew the Aliens comic, Mark Nelson, he lives here in Houston with us and has become a good friend. And
Nice.
I'm like, this all this Red 5 stuff is your fault. And then I met Mike Richardson, the publisher of Dark Horse at San Diego Comic Con. He's come by the booth a couple times. Another really tall guy. I'm 6'5", 6'6". So it's nice to be able to look up at another comic creator, literally and figuratively. But
Mm.
they really opened the door, and for all of us indie comic publishers.
Well, I would say my introduction to Red 5 came from Atomic Robo,
Yeah.
which I bought regularly. That was a wonderful book, and I always appreciated Red 5 publishing that one.
Oh, I loved it. I loved Atomic Robo, and I loved working with Brian Clevenger and Scott Wegener, and I loved introducing people to that book. It was a real easy book to go and preach the word about, and and like it was. I loved it because I was able to sell it to young kids, but also to adult fans,
Hmm.
and everybody loved it equally. So that was always a lot of fun. Our contract with them ended, and they opted to go publish it themselves because they wanted to do it as a full-time, their day job,
Yeah.
their living, and I fully understood that. So we wish them the best of luck when they left.
Yeah,
But it opened the door for our other titles to kind of get a little bit more of the spotlight.
Yeah, I mean, like Red Five, I think is a great indie company. But seriously, also you're the writer of also of Afterburn, correct? Now, when you think
Yes.
about Red Five and what to you is because you are Red Five, a Red Five comic book. How does Afterburn also kind of highlight what Red Five is to you and what you think about your brand?
When we started the company, our company line was comics that are fun.
Mm,
And we wanted to put books out there that we would read, that we wanted, that we would enjoy. So we were looking for action adventure, you know, something that was PG-13, bordering on R. The movie took it in the R direction further, but um, we wanted that big action feel. And where it started was when we started Red Five, we said, what did we want to do? And I said, I would love to do an Indiana Jones comic, but I know Lucasfilm is never ever going to let us touch it. So how do we do our Indiana Jones?
mm,
And I said, well, what if he was looking for modern treasures rather than ancient treasures? Instead of the Ark of the Covenant and the Holy Grail, what if he was looking for modern paintings, or what are other things that would be considered treasure from the last 100 years? And but then the question was, okay, well, what's the situation where he's looking for all these
mm.
treasures? Well, what about a post-apocalyptic environment? I was like, that's great. Okay, all right. But how do we destroy the world? Why is it post-apocalyptic? You know, is it aliens? What is it? And I was walking through the living room one day and my wife had the Discovery Channel on, just a noise in the background. And there was a special on what would happen if a solar flare hit Earth. And it was talking about, it would be like an EMP. It would knock out all electronics. You'd bathe the Earth in radiation.
Yes.
Things would die. Like it went on and on. I was like, that's a great way to destroy the world. And then once it just took off from there. The story came together, and then we used the cover artist. We were big Star Wars fans. We had a lot of connections to the Star Wars world from
Mm,
our days on the Force.net. And my co-writer, Paul Enns, was worked at Lucasfilm during episode 2 and episode 3. So we went and, got all these Star Wars creators that we knew, like the guy that did the covers, Matt Bush.
mm.
He was a well-known Star Wars artist at the time, so we recruited him to do our covers. And then the interior artist on the first Afterburn was Wayne Nichols, and he submitted his portfolio to us. And as soon as we saw he worked on a Star Wars comic, we're like, done. Let's get him on board. And so it all came together from there. Yeah, and then it took off.
I think I saw the Discovery episode. Where I teach, we do one day a year. We have a teach like something that you're interested in day to the kids, right? And I have this astronomy type class, and the name of the class is for that one day is the 10 ways we're all gonna die, and one of them is by solar flare.
Yeah,
And
that's a
I
good
think I
one.
have a clip from that Discovery episode that's attached to it because I show it during during the talk. Like I think it's like a 2 minute clip of it. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah, and I did all sorts of Google searches, on like half the story takes place in China, and we were doing search, China, what guns are used in China, what tanks, what are the nuclear missiles like in China, and I'm sure I'm on some CIA watch list from my Google searches, but it got worse from there on the other comics too, so it is
so
what it is.
so Red Five is a terrorist front for Chinese terrorism, apparently.
Yeah, we destroyed the world with a flare and afterburn with a meteorite with a strong gravitational pull and riptide. Um, I destroyed the world with ghosts and haunted. It goes on and on from there. So yeah, we have fun destroying the earth.
At least it's cathartic, getting it out of your system, right? I mean,
Yeah, I guess.
you just feel better now that you destroyed the world a few handful of
Yeah,
times.
yeah. It puts the world in perspective. I mean, you have a bad day at work, you're like, well, at least ghosts aren't chasing me.
Right.
So yeah, it could always be worse.
Well, like I said, Afterbirth is a great comic book, and like I said, your main character is the guy's name is Jake,
Mhm.
who prior to the solar flare is working on oil rigs, basically off the coast, right? And then after the destruction of the world, finds that his real talent apparently is in theft. Um, so when you think about Jake, has he
Yeah.
benefited from the world ending basically?
In some ways, yes. In some ways, no. In the ways, yes, he's kind of found his calling. When we were coming up with the character of Jake, we wanted a blue collar guy that was knowledgeable about the world. And these guys that work on, and that, was a risk taker. And these guys that work on the oil drilling rigs, it's a very dangerous job. They come from blue collar backgrounds and they travel everywhere, the most dangerous places in the world and the nicest places in the world. So it was kind of the perfect way to build a character there. Um, and then, we always wanted a character that wasn't invincible, that what didn't have his act entirely together, kind of like Jack Burton from Big Trouble in Little China. He wasn't invincible. He was frequently wrong, and he was, often getting his butt kicked. But somehow he always came out on top, and that's kind of what we were trying to do with Jake. But he surrounded himself with other people that were competent, and they worked as a team together. But I kind of wrote myself in a corner. We were saying, okay, this guy's so reckless with his life because when the solar flare hit, he got hit with radiation and he got, it triggered cancer. So
Yeah.
he's got a ticking clock. He's on his way to dying. That's why he in that respect, he did not win the lottery. He did not make the most out of this post-apocalyptic world. But it was a little bit of a difficult thing in writing because if you wanted to do sequels, well, okay, he's slowly dying. That gets kind of boring. So I had to write my way back out of it in volume two. So you got to go read that to find out how he gets out of cancer. So,
Well, the one guy's in comic books, except for Uncle Ben, is the great meme that's all over Facebook.
yeah, 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 that's right.
So when you think about Jake, obviously we know he's a thief. Obviously, but he's also saved the world a couple of times already. So while he's is thieving, he's also done some very heroic things. Is
Mhm.
Jake naturally a hero in your opinion?
I I think he doesn't think he is, but at his core, he knows right from wrong. He kind of wants to do the right thing, and despite all of his talk and bluster, he'll inevitably do the right thing. And the movie really hit on that. I mean, they caught on that very well. Batista's really good at playing that guy that, world weary guy. He doesn't want anything to do with the drama of the world, doesn't want to get involved.
Hmm.
But when push comes to shove, he ultimately will turn around and do the right thing and save the day. So, in that respect, the movie got the comic character right, definitely.
And also think and I might be reading too much into it, so if I am, please correct me. But I feel like there's a little social commentary as well in that so the world's basically over, governments have come, some have fallen. However, greed exists still. And people are still spending millions of dollars buying like I said, looking for like Mona Lisa. In the newest book, they're well. In this case, it's not greed. It's because they're trying to save his daughter. But for the most part, there's still a sense of greed as a drive. Can you kind of
Yeah.
just that and how is that a commentary on people apparently?
It is to some degree. Yeah, like natural disasters bring out the best in people and the worst in people.
Hmm.
And we saw that a lot in Houston. We recently had, we had a hurricane come through and flood the city. And you had some people going out and looting, and you had other people that came together to, help people out, rescue people from rising waters, clean out houses, help their neighbors, in their time of need. And, that's one of the things that we were kind of emphasizing in the comic. There are people, the West taking advantage of the people in the burn zone and stealing stuff. And then, but there's also, people in the middle of this post-apocalyptic realm that are trying to do the right thing. They're helping each other out. They're making the best of their situation. So there was a little commentary on that. Yeah, yeah. And the movie d touch touches on it some because Samuel L. Jackson's character, he's not a character that was in the comic, but he embodies a character that that we were trying to do. He sends Jake off in the film to go look for the Mona Lisa. And there is the initial question, well, why? I mean, there's all this suffering, famine, war, everything. Why are you going after a painting? And that does come up in the comic. Now we write it off in the comic to, it being greedy people just trying to pick the corpse, for what's left. But in the movie, there's a bit more to it. And there's some twists and turns there. So, yeah.
Now, another important element to your apocalyptic world is the
Mhm.
mutants, right?
Yeah,
Now,
yeah.
now, are they in Afterburn the film as well? And in your mind, what is the role of mutants overall in this new world?
There were a lot of different drafts of Afterburn, and some had the mutants, but the one that they ultimately did not. You know, we wanted, the mutants we always said they were normal everyday people, but they looked horrible. They looked like monsters. So, uh and we needed, the comic book flair, to make it look interesting as well. Um, One thing uh, that Paul Ince learned at Lucasfilm was, when you're looking at a scene, what makes the scene unique to that world?
Mm,
So if you have two people, if you have people in a fist fight, all right, you've got that in a million different movies. But what makes it unique to the world of Afterburn?
mm.
So like in the comic, we had a boat chase through a flooded city. Okay, what makes it unique to Afterburn? Well, we threw in mutant sharks and
I love the Joe's callback, and I loved it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. We had fun with it. And I've been accused of putting too many sharks in my comics, but I say you can never have too many sharks or apes. So
No, of course not.
um and we have apes in the third volume three of Afterburn, but we can talk about that later. But
Yeah.
anyway, Uh, the mutants, yeah, the mutants were always just kind of a way to, give it some visual flair, show people that are kind of in a misfortunate situation, they look like monsters, but they're really just like you and I.
Mm.
The movie doesn't have it, and I think they did that mainly for budget reasons. Um, but who knows? Maybe if there's a sequel, they can add some.
When there will be a sequel, right?
Oh
Um,
yeah. Well, if everybody goes and sees it this weekend, yeah, we'll
yes.
hope we'll hope for the best.
Well, like I said, I mean, it doesn't have a bad start. It has, as you said, David Bautista and Samuel Jackson
Mhm.
are two of the well-known names in the film. That's a nice start to any film franchise. Those two guys.
Yeah. As a Star Wars fan, having Mace Windu in your movie is quite a treat. And then as a Marvel fan, I mean, we've got Nick Fury, Drax, and Taskmaster, so even better.
Well, like I said, I mean, Samuel Jackson's had a hell of a career. Like, it's not many people who can say I'm Mace Windu and I'm Nick Fury. I'm the top guy in two of the biggest
Yeah.
franchises in history.
And now he can say he's King August. Yeah, adding the
Right.
comic book movie to his resume.
So when they were putting together the script, which is the screenplay was done by Nimrod Intel. Am I saying the name right? Nimrod Intel.
Yeah, uh-huh. Yeah.
How much input did you have on how this final script was being written? How much did you have to say about being on set with the film?
Well, what was funny was, I mean, there were so many drafts of it over the years, and every time they would have a draft, they would send it to me for comment, and I would read it, and there was things I really liked, and then I'd give them some comments and things. And the producers over at Endurance Media, Steve Richards, Toby, and then Toby Jaffe over at Original Film, they were always very generous in everything, always asking what I thought, allowing me to give input. I really I really wanted to stay back though and not interfere because I didn't want to be a diva. I'll the next time a comics option, then I'll be a diva. But the
Right,
first one,
right.
like, okay, I need to stay back and let it take its course, let the professionals do their thing. But they were great about letting me comment on it, give them some feedback. And but what was funny was when we went and saw them filming in Bratislava, Slovakia, like, okay, today we're gonna see, the train. I'm like, what train? and then we're going to do, we're going to see this and this and this. And I won't say anything there. There's spoilers there. I'm like, I don't remember any of that in the script. And it turns out in the fury of like pulling the movie together and starting production, they hadn't sent me the latest and greatest draft. So I was sitting there on set the first day, not knowing what was filming. They were blowing up trucks and there was gun battles and they had a train through the scene and they said today we're filming meat puppets exploding. I'm like, that's great. What's a
Nice.
meat puppet? It's exactly what it sounds like. It was a dummy that blew up and there was blood and guts flying everywhere. But uh, so then they realized I didn't have the script, so they sent it to me that night. I went and read it, and then the next day I came back and I'm like, oh, now I know what they're filming. Now,
Hmm.
we were actually seeing like the climax of the film being shot. So,
Well, that's
but it was
cool.
a lot of fun. I mean, we were walking around the set, and you know, the I met the fight coordinator. He was one of the fight coordinators on Avengers Endgame.
Ooh.
And he was like, "Oh, I know you. I've got your comic." He pulls out his laptop and he's like, "Yeah, we were pulling bits from the fight scenes from the comic and putting them in the movie." I'm like, "Oh, really?" And then sure enough, in the trailer, the scene where he pulls the pin on the grenade, uh, and then the guy's head blows off, that was from volume 2 of
Nice.
Afterburn. I'm like, "Oh, wow." Okay. Then, we're talking with the director of photography. He's like, "Oh yeah, I keep referring to the comics for the color palette and everything." It's like, wow, they didn't just throw the comic book out the window. They were actually referring to it. And it made me feel really good, that they had done that. But it was a deeply surreal experience. But everybody there was so welcoming. Like J.J. Perry is the nicest guy you could
Hmm.
ever hope to meet. He's got a long history in Hollywood as a stunt coordinator, and now he's directing. Um, he was in Iron Man, Blade. He was in Mortal Kombat. He was a stunt coordinator on John Wick and a second unit director in The Fast and the Furious. And then he started moving into directing. He did Day Shift on Netflix
Hmm.
with Jamie Foxx and Snoop Dogg and Franco. What's the Dave Franco. Uh, yeah, they're battling vampires, and then he did Killer's Game with Batista and a lot of the same producers and everything. So they got the band back together for Afterburn. So they had a real good shorthand when they were doing Afterburn, as far as between J.J. Perry and Dave Batista.
Well,
But it was a surreal, surreal experience. A lot of fun.
feel free to say hi for me to for Mr. Perry. He's welcome to come on the show whenever he wants.
Yeah, yeah. It turns out he's from Houston.
Oh, nice.
Um, Yeah, so I mailed him some comics when I first heard he was directing. I said, "Thanks for directing." And as soon as he saw the package came from Houston, he called me up and we chatted for a while. And then when we arrived on set, he cleared out his director's chair, put my wife in the director's chair under the tent in front of the
Nice.
monitors, rolled out the red carpet for her. My sons, like the drone operators, were showing my son how the drones were operated. The pyrotechnician was showing him how stuff was blown up. I mean, I couldn't ask for a nicer cast and crew.
Well, so this is kind of an important question too. Okay.
Yeah.
So now you've had three volumes of your comic book out, but now you have a movie that's out there with Batista and Jackson, and you said it's being by Perry, and you've been on location, all this other stuff. Is it
Mhm.
hard not to walk around now with a massive ego and be like, my comic is Afterburn, it's a movie. I'm not
Well,
doing this way.
there's always somebody to keep your ego in check, like at the same time, the comics here and the movies coming out, Diamond has imploded,
So
and
far, it's true.
we lost most of the distribution of our comics. So I'm getting new alternate distribution through Lunar, through Massive Indies, and with a new company called Filbo.
Yep.
And then I'm also distributing through Simon and Schuster. So that was a good check to the ego. I'm not going to be selling millions of copies of the comic. So,
Yeah.
uh, and then, um, you got your friends and family that could care less about movies or comics. So, you know, yeah,
Well,
they always put things in check.
well, shout out to Philbo. He's a very good guy.
Yeah,
I know
yeah,
the guy. Very cool.
yeah. We're excited we've got our first books distributed through him. And in fact, We're resoliciting Afterburn Volume 1 with Filbo and Massive. We're soliciting Volume 2, where Jake is racing against another team of better equipped, better trained, better financed treasure hunters to look for holy relics. And then Philbo and Lunar are soliciting volume 3 of Afterburn entitled Bad Blood, where the team gets sent into the African burn zone to look for a missing person.
Mm.
So you get to see a different part of the world in each one and some new adventures there.
Now, no, understood because I got to read the first issue of Bad Blood. I read it on Amazon Comixology.
Yeah, yeah.
Is it? It was on Comixology. It's not in print yet. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, so I was waiting to release it for when I knew the movie was coming out, so I wanted them in conjunction with each other. And then they announced the release date before we had a chance to solicit the comic. So I was scrambling to get the comic out the door. So I set it, for September 5th. And then, we had all the problems with Diamond. And they haven't been able to get the comic out the door in time, but I didn't hold back from Comixology. I'm like, let Comixology get it on out there so it's at least available somewhere when the movie comes out. So
Now,
it's some of the trials and tribulations of a publisher, an indie publisher. Yeah.
so when you're thinking about Bad Blood, when you were creating the first Afterburn series, had you considered this many series, two series volumes in the future? Or are you kind of like how close is this more Star Wars as far as planned trilogy, or is this more like Die Hard, where you're after one, you're thinking about what can I do next?
Well, when Paul and I first sat down to write the first Afterburn, we wrote what we call the Afterburn Bible. And we wrote a lot of stuff that wasn't in the comic. Like, where did Jake come from? What was his childhood like?
Hmm.
What did he do right after the flare hit? How did he survive? Well, everything up to the point of where we pick up with the comic. And then we also set up the rules for the flare. It killed anybody out in the open. Anybody that, was somewhat shielded was bathed in radiation. People that were heavily shielded are the only survivors. It killed this percentage of the population. It did this to animals. It did this to plants. It caused continental fire. It did this, this, and this. We kind of thought it all out in advance. But then we also started thinking about, okay, what happened in China? What happened in Europe? What happened in Africa? And then, that kind of spawned some ideas for, what could happen in later adventures. And then we also had a list of what are all the things that he could go after, all those modern treasures I was talking about.
Hmm.
You know, is it works? Is it statues? Is it paintings? Is it something like data? Computer drives. Is it the cure for cancer sitting somewhere in the burn zone, at some research facility? So we started, coming up with all this, and the ideas for potential sequels came from there. But the idea for Bad Blood, I mean, I'd been sitting on the idea for it for 10 years.
Hmm.
See, the Afterburn movie kind of went into development hell. I mean, there was, writer strikes, director strikes, uh, COVID. It just like one thing after another dragged it out. The company that produced it is called Endurance Media, and it's endurance for a reason because they endured everything and got it out the door. But it took so long. But we were kind of waiting for the movie to happen to pull the trigger on some of these other adventures. So there's
Well,
more besides Volume 3. So
well,
we'll see how
what I
that movie
thought,
goes.
what I thought was a great touch in the Bad Blood first issue. Okay, Jake's older brother when they were kids,
Yeah.
Jake's older brother is shoplifting with a Batman T-shirt on. I thought that was a nice autonomy of honestly recognizing the right thing to do and totally not doing it. I thought that was a
Yeah,
nice
yeah.
little touch.
Yeah, thank you. Did you also notice what he was shoplifting?
Was that I'm trying to remember what it was, comic book, right?
It was a Dave Bautista wrestling action figure.
Oh,
So
okay. That's a nice. That's also a nice
I
touch.
have a few other nods. I have a few other nods to the movie in Volume Three. Some may be more subtle than others. There was when we heard J.J. Perry was directing the movie, I started watching videos on YouTube of interviews with him, and he was showing a stunt, and if somebody got hit, and he goes, "Bingo, gringo." I was like, "Oh, that's great!" And when we my kids started saying "Bingo, gringo," and when I saw him, I was like, "Where did that come from?" He goes, "That came from the movie with Mel Gibson, Get the Gringo."
Oh no.
And Mel Gibson's character was talking to a small a kid, and the kid said "Bingo, gringo," and it got stuck in J.J. Perry's lexicon, and then it took it off from there. But I took that and dropped it into, I think it's in issue 3 of Bad Blood, so keep an eye out for it.
I will do. That's awesome. Well, like I said, I just thought it was an ingenious connection. And so in this third volume, Bad Blood, Jake's new mission is to save a woman named Helen, who's the daughter of a very wealthy, I guess, billionaire, um, corporate
It's his niece.
niece. Okay,
Yeah.
sorry, niece. Um, and she's been captured by mutants, led by a man. And if I say the name wrong, please correct me. Nakona.
Yeah, yeah.
Nakona.
Very
Okay,
good.
got it. So within this world, there's obviously different tribes of mutants, especially even in this area, there's different groups. So what makes the Conan so dangerous?
And in the 1800s, there was a lot of settlers moving into Indian territory in Texas. So, I kind of treated the mutants as the Indians, the Native Americans, and the settlers as, people from the West that were kind of going in and picking up the oil and gas reserves, the diamond mines, everything else, and kind of shoving the mutants aside. And there's a story in Texas history about a young girl. Her family was killed by the Native Americans, and then they kidnapped her. Her name was Cynthia Ann Parker. Go Google it, read up on it. But she was taken to the tribe and then kind of integrated into the tribe. And there was a massive hunt to, find her and rescue her. So that became kind of the inspiration for Afterburn Bad Blood. Jake and his team are the ones that are, kind of like the Texas Rangers out looking for her. But there's a whole lot more going on behind the scenes. And the motivation for the uncle trying to find the missing niece has a lot more behind it that you find out in subsequent issues. So I try to have a little bit of real world history and everything,
Hmm.
and that was it. So you get the Cliff Notes behind the scenes explanation there.
And obviously, Jake is being offered a bunch of money to go rescue Helen. He's
Mhm.
also told that he's not the first team to try this. Every other team has died trying, right?
Yeah,
So, is it greed or vanity that makes Jake think that his team can do it?
both. He's got this. He's kind of like Jack Burton. I'm invincible. What did he say when they took the potion? I'm feeling kind of good. I'm feeling kind of invincible. And then he goes in, and then they typically end up finding out they're in over their heads. So, but there is greed. And I think the thing I still need to do in Afterburn is we always show them going to get the money, but never what they do with it after the fact. I guess it's just replacing all the equipment that they lose in the previous adventure. So yeah, but um, yeah, it's a little bit of both cockiness as well as greed. Yeah.
And one of the characters that you also introduced in this, which was kind of interesting, again, if I say the name wrong, correct me, Boudreaux.
Yeah, Badru. Yeah, yeah. I wanted to have some locals. Like in each of the series, you meet one of the mutants that's from that region. And, even though they have a scary, monstrous appearance, you learn, hey, this is just a regular guy in a bad
Hmm.
situation. He does not like Nokona even more. So he's got his own axe to grind and reason to help Jake and his team. So yeah, but you needed someone to guide him around and help him navigate all the local hazards, whether it be um, mutant lions or rebels or whatever else there is there. Yeah.
Now, with Badru, kind of how I interpreted it, sort of what he did was he got Jake into brought him into the situation, got him where he needed to be. They kind of
Mhm.
goes, "I'll be off over here. Good luck."
Yeah. Yeah.
Does he show
If
back
you
up?
make it, I'll pick you up.
Yeah, I mean, does he feature more into the rest of the series, or has he is he now done?
He is along for the rest of the ride. So I'll leave it at that. I don't want to spoil it more, but he's along for the ride and he's going to provide some valuable commentary along the way.
Now with Jake, and I mean, obviously, as you create, like, so you have the mutants in the world who are
Mhm.
basically people, but they've been, the solar flare and radiation has changed things. Are they sort of, are we talking like X-Men world where they're viewed as being other, or are they viewed as being just us but different? How does Jake feel about the mutants within the world?
Yeah, I think that a lot of the world looks at their outward appearance, the tumors, the mutations, all the horrible disfigurements, and they see them as subhuman. But they're not. I mean, they're just kind of people in a misfortunate situation, and
Hmm.
that's kind of what we wanted to portray with that. Yeah, no, they don't have superpowers. But that's what we were looking for with it. And when the producers picked up the comic, they were like, "Oh yeah, we want a world like Children of Men, where there's all these people that the world is destroyed, it's falling apart, and your regular everyday people are just struggling to survive." And that's what we wanted, but we threw the mutant aspect in just to kind of, like I said, give it some visual flair, uh, and make it look a little unique. So
So,
the mutants aren't essential to the story, and that's kind of one of the reasons why I think they didn't include them in the Afterburn movie. But there's still room for them to come in later potentially.
so the other part is too. I mean, obviously, he's being paid a lot of money. I can't remember. I think you said like 40 million. I think if I'm correct with the numbers, it's a big number.
Whatever it is, it had to be a ridiculous amount that somebody would risk their
Right.
life for. So,
So when you think about money in this world, like, is that still the same? Like, are there enough, um, let's say, government functioning for money to be work the way it does in our society?
in the comic book, we made a point to say that the flare only microwaved the day side of Earth. And I specifically got a globe, rotated it, and I'm like, okay, if I what's on the day side if I only do Europe, Africa, and Asia, and then North and South America can remain untouched. So the idea was the United States is completely untouched, unharmed, business as usual, um, and they don't want anything to do with the disaster that's happening on the other side of the planet. So, we as Americans are very narrow focused on our own little bubble anyway, and this kind of re emphasizes it to a bigger degree. But uh, yeah. So, what was your original question?
So the function, what was it for? Because for money, to
Oh
have
yeah,
the government has to have the infrastructure around to make it work.
yeah. So the United States is just running business as usual. So that's where the money carries its weight. That's where they come back to cash their paycheck and live large. But Jake's just more at home in a post-apocalyptic environment, and we kind of touch on that at the beginning of volume two. When he comes back, and there's a lady, there's a bratty kid in front of him in line at the hamburger place, and he tells him off, and then he nearly gets arrested. And he's like, I'd rather be running from mutants in the burn zone than dealing with a Karen in the United States. But
So,
yeah, but the movie, that's one difference that the movie has from the comic. They say the entire world got hit by the flare and is repeatedly getting hit by the flare. And so in the movie, Jake's retrieving, like you see in the trailer, a Stradivarius at the beginning for a pack of Oreos, a record, a Public Enemy record, and a couple of other luxuries. So money doesn't mean a whole lot in the movie world.
so I mean, once Jake is successful, because I assume you're not killing off your main character in the series, but you never know, maybe it could be, but let's say you're not. He makes all that money. Is he done? I mean, is there a point of enough for Jake?
It's in my mind, it's not about the money for him. It's just going out and risking his life because he's got nothing better to do. He's kind of lacking purpose, lacking family, lacking everything. Um, he just keeps throwing money in the bank account and then diving back into the thick of things. But that's kind of one of the themes of each volume along the way is, he realizes the true value is his family, his friends,
Hmm.
and it's not worth risking his life repeatedly when he's got something to live for, or risking his friends, for these frivolous things.
So for our listeners, what can they look forward to in the upcoming arc for Bad Blood?
Yeah, so we got some I said I used Indiana Jones for inspiration.
Yeah.
Well, Bad Blood's kind of our last crusade. Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. You get more insight into Jake's background and his family. And let me just say, his brother shows up again. And there's some fun around that. So look for that in issue 3. And then we've got what I like to say is the Afterburn version of the Alamo in volume or issue 4 of Bad Blood. So keep an eye out for it. Lots of explosions. And you remember I said I like to throw a lot of sharks
Yeah.
and apes in the comics. You can never have too many. I got both
Very
in the
cool.
upcoming Blood, so keep an eye out for it.
That's awesome, Mr. Chitwood. That is awesome. I want to thank you so much for talking about Bad Blood, Afterburn Bad Blood, and like I said, can't wait to see the movie. Thank you so much. Oh, I think we froze right at the end.
Oops.
Well,
You want to try again?
yeah, we'll try again. All right.
Yeah, go. You ready? Okay. Yeah, go by the website afterburn.movie. I didn't realize .movie was an extension like .com or .net, but it is. So afterburn.movie, and you can look up showtimes for movie theaters playing Afterburn in your immediate area. It's kind of a limited engagement, so you may have to look around a little bit to find the theater nearest you playing it.
All right.
But
Very cool. Thank you so much, sir.
all right, thank you.
All right. Have a good night.